Hello, my name is Hertz, and I'm doing quick videos that give quick overviews of my new book that just came out today from MIT Press called Art and DIY Electronics. Um, right now, this is the table of contents here. We've already done videos on all of these, and I'm just now exploring building identities. Identity and Taratter MI-03, device art Chindogu, and alternative presence. Now, this whole cluster of chapters relates to artists and designers and hackers doing creative technology for the purposes of exploring identity, kind of building artifacts related to their identities that they're not finding in pop culture. This kind of alternative stuff that they're really expressing themselves and who they are. And I start out by talking about Maywa Denki, a Japanese group, and their Taratter MI-03. So I start this cluster of chapters. I have 3 chapters here that are different case studies that all explore the idea of identity. I talk about identity as or give an overview of identity, um, and kind of ask a question. Is all DIY practice personal in some ways? And I would say that kind of. I mean, DIY practice often comes about from people who don't find part of themselves in pop culture, popular mainstream culture. A lot of DIY practice and other technological subcultures do this. They use technology for a different purpose than what's standard. And their identities are different and their motivations are different. So the first case study is Maywa Denki's Taratter MI-03. Now, Maywa Denki builds really phenomenally creative devices, almost a parallel universe, I would say, device that, and they wear these amazing kind of worker outfits, um, and represent themselves as kind of employees of this company that builds these somewhat nonsensical or fun devices. Now, the device that I am talking about came out of a series of works that they did um, in the 90s, around 1999. And these devices all used kind of mechanical percussion as a theme. Um, they used mechanical percussion in a Tsukuba series of devices. Now, the main one that I talk about is this kind of uh, tap dancing device that you put on these shoes, and as you flick your fingers, it makes these knockers on the ground tap. So it's kind of a fun device. It's not like, this isn't like practical in the conventional sense, but it's more about exploring an alternative universe, I would say. It's more kind of exploring, and here is actually a close-up of what this device, the Taratter MI-03, looks like. So it's a bit of an oddball invention, harebrained kind of creative invention, a little bit mad scientist almost, where it's meant to be funny. Now, I say that these folks are doing this to explore their identities through a parallel universe, almost a parallel universe company that um, it's not like steampunk, but this is kind of like knocking on wood punk. or like physical glockenspiel punk or something. I don't write that, but um, I do talk about how they build this stuff to explore their identity in and really carve out a different universe. And there's a lot of work in a similar way. Uh, some of it, I mean, there's a cluster of it that emanates out of Japan. Um, Kusahara is a writer who writes about device art. Device art is a great kind of concept that discusses this type of like tech gadget that's done for the sake of being an interesting tech gadget and non-conventional tech gadget. Device art is a concept that I talk about here in Kusahara. I go into. I make an attempt actually to talk about the Japanese Industrial Revolution here. I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna get like raked over the coals for trying to summarize the Japanese Industrial Revolution. I'm not, but I do. um, Now, this is actually quite interesting because I try to draw parallels between this type of work, this device art, and parallel world Chindogu almost approaches to building alternative world devices. I compare this to James Auger, who worked with Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby, and Anthony Dunn had really kind of popularized this concept that had come from James Auger. This is an idea that in the in the present we have kind of technologies that are tech, history goes from left to right here. This is the past. This is the future. Um, Technology prototypes often go through kind of a domestication phase, which is what Auger describes, and where these kind of parallel universe or alternative kind of concepts get domesticated into the present, into kind of like a standard product development. Now, the really kind of neat thing, and this is of interest to people like Julian Bleecker and design fiction folks, is this idea that the past can fork off into a alternative present. Now, one example of this is steampunk. This idea that in the past, technology developed differently than it actually did in history. Steampunk is the idea that electronics basically never existed and that technology evolved using steam power and not computing, not electronics. We only had steam, and so steampunk is an example of alternative presence, right? It takes the past, it makes a fictional past, almost a fictional history of the past, and extends that into the present. Now, this same principle of alternative presence is exactly what's going on with Maywa Denki in building this alternative present. Except it wasn't Steam. This is I don't write this in the book, but it's sort of like glockenspiel or or wooden knocking percussion, analog. So this really takes analog and electromechanical as the main thing, intentionally old-fashioned, intentionally physical, and it uses this as an alternative present. And this is something that Maywa Denki extends into their identity. Okay. Um, I also have this diagram here. This is made by my graduate student, Kaiwan Yang, where the idea that we can take histories and we can build out alternative histories in order to bend products and concepts into a more preferable future. This is a bit complicated to explain right here, but that's that chapter. And so that's chapter 3.1, Identity in Taratter MI-03 from Maywa Denki in my new book that just came out today, Art and DIY Electronics from MIT Press. I will not object to you going and buying it directly after this video. Thank you.